Annabelle was a truly wonderful woman, one of the world's life enhancers. Above all else, she was a much devoted mother, devoted to her two exceptional sons. She was also a superb daughter, sister, and for so many, a close friend. Ironically, she was at the height of her powers in her tireless work to help vulnerable women when she died. She had so much more to give. At least now there has been justice, but we all know nothing will bring her back. We can be sure that her spirit will continue to inspire many. During the trial, at times it's been almost unbearable, hearing the years that she herself suffered abuse, and then the nature of the horrendous attack. One thing we've learned is it's so important that good men and women who encounter misogyny, and in particular men who are violent and or controlling towards their partners, should have the courage to call them out. We know it's difficult, but there are ways it can be done with sensitivity, and they should do it even if they risk being ostracized by their peers. It is also critical that it's widely known that the most dangerous time for a victim in an abusive relationship is when she tries to leave. It was clear on the evidence that until the very end, Annabelle was incredibly courageous, trying to help others rather than safeguarding herself. Annabelle dedicated her life to helping others. She worked in refugee camps and schools. She co-founded Mama Sue's to provide creativity and support for refugee women. And she lived 46 altruistic years in which she gave so much to so many. We know that it would have been Annabelle's wish that her life should not be defined by her tragic death, but by the rich legacy of love and support for the vulnerable. We would also, as a family, like to register our thanks to the police who carried out a high-quality investigation, to the Crown Prosecution Service, and to the counsel at trial in the way they presented the case.
Today, Clifton George has been sentenced to life with a minimum term to serve of 23 years in prison for the murder of his partner, Annabel Rook, which took place on the 17th of June last year, 2025. Today's sentence marks the end of a long and difficult process for Annabelle's family and loved ones. During the investigation and trial, her family have shown tremendous strength and courage. Many gave evidence in court despite the trauma of reliving these events, and I would like to thank them for the dignity that they have shown at every stage. I would also like to thank my team of detectives for their hard work during this case. From the very beginning, we were determined to establish accurately what had happened to Annabelle. Through witness accounts and extensive digital evidence, we carefully pieced together the circumstances leading up to her death and ensured the full facts were presented before the court. I would like to thank the Crown Prosecution Service and Prosecution Counsel for their diligent and articulate presentation of the case to the jury. Tackling violence against women and girls remains an absolute priority for the Met. Too many victims of domestic abuse suffer in silence, and I would urge anyone experiencing such abuse to come forward and report it to the police. Our officers will listen, support you, and do everything in our power to help. I would like to close by remembering Annabelle. She was a much-loved mother, daughter, sister, aunt, and friend. Her loss continues to be felt by all who knew her. Nothing can bring Annabelle back, but I hope today's sentence provides some measure of comfort to her family, knowing that Clifton George has been held accountable for his actions and justice served. Thank you.
On the 17th of June 2025, you murdered Annabel Rook, the mother of your 2 children and your partner of over a decade. You brutally stabbed her 31 times. Although from the outset you accepted that you had killed Annabel, you claimed that you had lost control and denied murder on the basis of the statutory partial defence of loss of self-control pursuant to sections 54 and 55 of the Coroners and Justice Act 2009. As required by the law to do, I considered whether, after careful analysis, there was sufficient evidence for that defence safely to be left to a jury. I decided there was insufficient evidence under each limb of the statutory test. The remaining issue for the jury was what your intention was when you killed Annabel. After deliberation, the jury unanimously convicted you of murder. You have also pleaded guilty to 1 count of arson, being reckless as to whether life is endangered. The facts I take account of in sentencing you today are facts of which I am sure, having heard all of the evidence. Having heard all the evidence, I am left in no doubt that there has always been another troubling side to your character. An overwhelming picture has emerged of your regular anger and volatility. Numerous witnesses described your pronounced temper with the reactions that could escalate rapidly, often sparked by petty or insignificant perceived slights. I am also sure, particularly on the basis of the heart-rending notes to herself left by Annabel on her phone, which she had no reason to believe would be read by others, that you were controlling and emotionally abusive. This aspect of your character was evident from the outset of your relationship with Annabel, which started over 12 years ago. Once you had both decided to commit to an exclusive relationship, you moved into Annabel's house. Not long after that, Annabel fell pregnant with your first child together. Even then, there were signs of your inability to control your temper. The one time even you accepted that you were physical with Annabel during your loss of temper was when she was 7 months pregnant. Having listened to all the evidence, I am sure that there were at least a few other times, as Annabel had related to her friends, when in private your anger crossed the line from shouting into physical intimidation. I am sure that this was an occasional rather than a regular feature of your anger. No doubt driven, in large part because of this side of your personality, it became increasingly clear to Annabel that she knew you and she had to separate. That she did not do so sooner, as is made clear from both the messages she sent to others and her own internal notes, was because of your children and Annabel's overwhelming desire to minimize their pain and anxiety. You and Annabel had another argument that evening in which you remained angry that Annabel had confided in others, and in particular members of her side of the family, about what had happened to X when she had not told you or X's father. No one, apart from you, will know precisely what led you to violence that evening, but I am sure from everything I have heard that it is untrue that the first physical contact was a push from Annabel. She feared you. She feared your wrath, and to escalate the row in that way would have been completely out of character. In any event, you admit you started punching Annabel, and then you were on top of her, strangling her. You were shouting, "You lied, you lied." I'm sure the only thing on your mind was your grossly disproportionate sense of grievance that Annabelle had confided in others about what had happened to X. Having heard all the evidence about Annabelle's clear and single-minded intention to achieve amicable co-parenting arrangements after your separation, I am sure that whatever may or may not have been said during your row, Annabelle did nothing from which you could have seriously believed you would be anything other than the weekend dad you knew you were about to become. At one point, you stopped strangling Annabelle. You made the deliberate choice to retrieve a weapon. You went to the kitchen and returned with a knife. It is a grim fact that, given your love of cooking, this had been a thoughtful present from Annabelle a few years previously. You returned, and in your rage and fury, brutally stabbed Annabelle to death. There were a total of 22 stab wounds to her body. There were a further 9 defensive stab wounds to her arms. At least 5 wounds were administered with severe force. The deepest of these penetrated to a depth of about 11 centimetres. The most serious of all these wounds was one to the right breast, which passed through the right lung and into the right ventricle of her heart. From that moment, she did not have long to live. The pathological evidence demonstrated that some of the injuries to the abdomen had been caused after Annabelle's collapse. For the murder of Annabel Rook, the sentence I am required to pass is one of life imprisonment. The minimum time you are to serve before you are eligible to apply for parole to be released on licence is 23 years. From this is deducted the 350 days you have already served. That is therefore a term of 22 years and 5 days. For arson, you are sentenced to 6 years imprisonment to be served concurrently. Whether you are to be released after the minimum term I have ordered is a decision for the parole board and will be decided on the basis of whether, at that point, you no longer present a danger. If you remain a danger, you will serve longer than the minimum term and may never be released. If you are released, you will remain liable indefinitely to be recalled to serve the remainder of your sentence, that is, until the end of your life, should you breach any of the conditions of your licence. You may be taken from the dock.